Artist Kahinde Wiley is a contemporary American painter who plays with pattern that overlaps and extends off the edge of the canvas.
Kind of a mixed media piece.
Okay, so we are in grade 8 going to be, as our last project, doing a print that is kind of a mixed media piece. So we'll be making a stamp and printing the stamp multiple times. This is the stamp, and it's made with craft foam, and it's on cardstock. And then the goal is to create an interesting pattern using the motif of our stamp and somehow juxtaposing the print with a figure. And the figure can either be from a magazine or it could be a self-portrait. So it's your choice. Notice also that the stamp is overlapping in some areas the image of the figure. Here's another one, thinking about negative space, so you don't have to fill all the positive space if you don't want. And I have not yet practiced overlapping onto this figure, so that would be an extension of this piece. It's not quite done. Okay, so I'm going to explain how to do this now. Step 1 to creating a stamp is actually planning the motif. And the motif should be an image or abstract shapes. Those work best. I would say the easiest thing to do is abstract shapes. So when you get this worksheet, you're going to use a pencil and you're going to try to use a variety of lines. Maybe some are curved. Some can also be angular. And you could also use some shapes as well. Do not use any words or text. The reason why is when you print, it will print backwards unless you've worked through it to create the stamp backwards. But overall for this project and the artist we're studying, which is Kahinde Wiley, he doesn't use text repeated, so I think it's best to use line or shape. And of course shapes can also be referred to as space, so you can think about this being positive space if I were to fill this shape in, and the space around it would be negative. A great way to think about positive and negative space if you're unsure is you just put your hand in front of you and you look at your hand. When you're looking at your hand, that's the positive space. Your hand is physically occupying air. Air moves around your hand. This is the positive space. When you look between your fingers, that's the negative space. So I find that visualizing that helps. Some artists, when they're looking at something, will focus their attention on the negative shape, and when they draw, they are drawing just looking at that space between. So focusing on this, which ends up leaving a halo or the positive space unoccupied. So it kind of reverses it, but this is negative space around your hand. Okay, and when you take your hand away, that was the positive space. So what you're going to do here is just do 3 different motif designs. Touch either the edge of the boxes like I did here. So this is the box. So you want to touch either edge, or even sometimes touch lines that you've done already. Now, I don't want to make this too complicated because remember, to make the stamp, I have to cut those pieces of foam out. So I will show you some different examples of designs that kids have done. Here I'm probably going to activate this negative space here just so that it's touching, and that is an interesting stamp. So I would repeat that over here. Then you're going to take a thick black marker, a Sharpie, and you're going to fill in some of the shapes. You can use a different color than black, but I'm using black so it shows up really clearly for you on the screen. And the interesting thing about this is you are thinking about positive and negative space. Because again, like my hand, if I could color in this white shape, but I decided to color in these shapes. So for me, the black represents positive and the white is the space around. I'm going to do the same here, blocking this in. The stamp will be reversed though. I could have easily have colored in those other shapes. So now that I'm done my 3 designs, I'm ready to start choosing which one I'm going to turn into a stamp. So you want to remember, everything that you colored solid with your marker is going to be the shapes that you have to cut out of foam. So choose the path of least resistance. I wouldn't recommend doing a stamp this detailed with so many lines. This student worked very hard on the stamp, and in the end, the print wasn't that successful. It was just too complicated. Inking it was very hard. So simple stamps work without fail. They're pretty foolproof, to be honest. As long as you get your foam glued down so that when you flex it a little bit, it doesn't pop off, that's good. You want to make sure that it's really securely glued down with gel medium. To get this design and be able to cut it out of foam, we sometimes need to make a tracer. So I'm going to choose, I think I like this design the best, so I'm going to show you how to make the stamp now. So I need a piece of tape. I just need one piece because my tracing paper, I don't want it to move around on me, and this way I can kind of flip it. But the marker's very visible. I'm going to use pencil. So choose a pencil and start to trace out your design. So I just used tracing paper to trace the design I chose for my stamp making. And now what I'm going to do is use this tracing paper to cut the foam out of the desired shapes. So what you're going to do is you're going to get a piece of foam where you can fit the shape onto it. So for example, this big squiggle, when I put it, and I'm going to put the graphite face down onto the foam, it needs to fit within the piece of the foam. So this foam has lots of holes cut in it. It's not going to work for the big squiggle. But this small squiggle shape, it could work. So what I'm going to do now is with the graphite colored in facing the foam, I'm going to retrace or even just scribble across the whole shape. And this is like making carbon paper. This is how you can copy an image or a shape really quick. Well, not really quick. It's just easier than redrawing it. It's accurate. It's 100% accurate. Now I can peel it up and check, and there is my squiggle. I drew it this way, and I've transferred it into the reverse. Once the stamp is made, it will print the way that I drew it. So, but right now when I make the stamp, this squiggle will go here in the bottom right-hand corner, even though on my drawing it's on the bottom left-hand corner. Then I would take some scissors and I would cut this out. Okay, so now we're going to cut out the shapes. If you're using textured foam, remember that you want to trace this on top of the texture because it will otherwise be on the back. So just keep that in mind. Cut out now, and I'm going to keep in mind the design I chose. I'm going to glue it in the opposite corner. So this was on the bottom left-hand side. I'm going to glue it in the bottom right-hand side of my square. The cardstock is already cut for you. You're going to use a spatula and some gel medium. Gel medium is basically acrylic paint without any color in it, no pigment. And what it does is it's going to act as a glue, but much more flexible than white glue. We want our stamp to not lift up the foam that we're gluing down. So I'm just gluing that down, and if you have extra glue that squished out the gel, if you leave it like this, it'll print. So I want to actually kind of smooth out around the edge, and I'm going to line it up so it meets the edge, the shape meets the edge of the card, which is the stamp backing. Make sure some gel is underneath, and then just use your fingers to press it down so that it doesn't lift up. And then I would go to the next piece and cut that out and lay it down. So the stamp, that's how you're going to create it, by laying the foam down, and then it needs 24 hours to dry before we can actually ink it with the color. So we're going to leave this for today. We're going to put it in the drying rack on one of the cafeteria trays, and we'll put a whole bunch there, making sure that they are side by side and not stacked on top, because otherwise they'll stick together, and then you gotta separate them. That's it for stamp making. Okay, thanks.